Hey folks, welcome to Faultlines with Jules. On this channel, we'll be talking about the fault lines in American politics, history, culture, civics, and what to do about them. Right? Frankly, I don't know the answer to that question. Uh, Part of me thinks that we need to find the fault lines so that we can fill in the cracks and cover them up, and a part of me thinks we need to find them so we can stick a piece of TNT down there and blow the whole thing sky high. What I want to talk about today, though, specifically, is the Kirk assassination and some of the aftermath of it. So it's important to start with the fact that I loathe political violence. It's immoral to kill somebody who you disagree with, but also it's a spectacularly ineffective mode of political activism, right? When you study resistance movements throughout history, what you find is that the successful ones typically do two things. They kind of disturb the equilibrium of their opponents, of the state or whatever actors they're fighting against. They attempt to destabilize them and unsettle them. And then the second thing is highlighting the injustices and the hypocrisies of whatever system that it is they're fighting against. Random political assassination doesn't achieve either of these ends. And I would argue, in fact, almost goes in the opposite direction because it hardens the resolve of your opponents to never give in to you, usually invites some kind of crackdown or backlash. And then ultimately, when violence starts, that's when reason leaves the conversation entirely. But I think the other thing I have to say about Charlie Kirk's assassination is that Charlie himself would never have subscribed to almost any of those objections to political violence. When Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, was almost murdered with a hammer in his home by a crazy man, Charlie Kirk's response was to snigger and laugh and say that some amazing patriot out there should bail out the guy who did it. Right? And of course, he gave some mealy mouthed little, oh, and of course he shouldn't have done it in the first place, but he didn't mean it. Right? He thought it was amusing, he thought it was entertaining. That's why I'm a little disturbed by what I've been seeing since his death, right? You've got everybody, left, right, and center, acting like this man was some kind of secular saint, right? You've got conservative commentators and mainstream outlets, the champion of open and earnest debate, which is ridiculous, frankly. But you've even got these abundance liberals in the New York Times saying, and I quote, that Charlie Kirk did politics the right way. And to me, this just seems like a symptom of the civility police on both sides of the aisle being taken advantage of by the radical right to police people's speech and try and shove a narrative down our throats about this man that isn't particularly factual. So, despite this kind of fuzzing of Kirk's record and legacy, we should be clear that his politics were extraordinarily black and white, pun intended. Kirk, on multiple occasions, made it very clear that his fundamental beliefs about modern American politics were rooted in the idea that Donald Trump is the last best hope of Western civilization, that he was going to save the West from godless totalitarianism. And this is laughable, of course, but it's also chilling, right? It's laughable because it's simplistic and like the kind of politics that a kindergartner would come up with, but it's chilling because it's dangerous. It hurt chief propagandist of January 6th. Not only did he platform and repeat every single crazy claim about election fraud or election denial, he also boasted until the day he died of sending 80 busloads of quote unquote patriots to the Capitol. And despite what we're all supposed to now believe, apparently, of him being some saint of civic engagement, these people were not there to engage in civil debate. They were there, filled with paranoid rage and self righteousness, to enforce their own preferred outcome of that election on the rest of us, just as Kirk intended. But the thing is, this reaction is not just limited to the online ecosystem on X of a bunch of crazy people who can't get off their keyboards. You've got the Deputy Secretary of State saying that they're going to revoke immigrants' visas for being mean to Charlie Kirk. You have got the head of the FCC, Brendan Carr, basically acting like a mafioso to get ABC to cancel Kimmel. Right? These things are very real government actions that are affecting our rights as citizens. As should be clear, I don't think any of us should have any patience for the kind of industrial scale historical revisionism that's going on around Kirk's life. We need to be very, very clear. Charlie Kirk was a racist, woman-hating, conspiracy monger who was more interested in lying to people than he was in actually engaging to civic debate. And for example, this is a man who routinely platformed the Great Replacement Theory, the idea that white people in America are being subjected to this massive conspiracy of leftists to replace them with culturally undesirable brown people. This is the worst of the worst, the lowest of the low of kind of ideology, and we should all be calling it out, right? To call this man divisive is not just inadequate, it's a desecration of plain speech. His creation, Turning Point USA, was not some unique and revolutionary youth movement for the right. It's a rehash. They're essentially a discount version of the John Birch Society from the 50s, peddling the exact same lies and bullshit about communists and subversives in all of our universities and how they're brainwashing the youth. In 2016, TPUSA actually put out what they call the Professor Watchlist, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a McCarthyite blacklist for professors that Charlie Kirk put out specifically for the purpose of getting them doxxed and harassed so that they would either shut up or quit. I don't think that this is a legacy that deserves to be commemorated. I think this is a legacy that deserves to be condemned. And the lesson of Charlie Kirk's life and death to me is not so much tied up with the man himself, but it's tied up with what it means for our modern political age, right? This was not a unique or original guy. He was part of that same species of slimy influencer who valued performance over substance, who engaged in sneering and trolling of his opponents to engender outrage so that he could get a bunch of clickbait videos and become the master of the social media political age, which frankly he was in many ways. And him mastering those techniques led an entire generation of media illiterate young men to idolize him. And that's something that we should all be concerned with. You know, the other day, the president said that Charlie Kirk is going to leave a legacy for all time or something like that. And I'm just kind of inclined to ask, what legacy? Kirk was one of those guys whose popularity and importance and significance was directly tied to the profligacy of his output. The minute he stopped posting last week was the minute that he lost all of his significance and importance. What he's leaving behind is not, in my opinion, a legacy. It's an echo of a particularly nasty moment in American politics right now. And frankly, that echo's already fading. So drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think I'm right? Do you think that Kirk is being whitewashed? Do you think he's being demonized? How are you viewing the right-wing attempt to use his death for various political ends? I'd be really curious to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks a lot for listening. Have a good day.